Welcome back to the show. You have found us here. My name is Kevin Gorg. I host Wooden Sticks on a weekly basis. We are broadcasting, as always, today from the Aquarius Home Services studio. And really a fun time to be talking hockey here locally, specifically with the Minnesota Wild. We're recording this midweek before the team gets back out on the road. We're going to head to California this weekend and then off to face the Utah Hockey Club early next week. There's been some tough injury news, and the Wild are trying to weather that storm as best they can. And clearly this year's edition of the Minnesota Wild, a little more of a confident bunch and able to maybe withstand some of the tough news they're getting. We've been without Matt Zuccarello with the Wild now for three and a half weeks. Jakub Lauko, who's been a really important piece on the penalty kill and with that fourth line, he's inching closer to a return. But then the two big ones right now, and it's kind of bittersweet news as we record this on a Wednesday, as you find us, maybe later here in the week. Both Joel Eriksson Ek and Jonas Brodin are going to get to represent Sweden in the Four Nations face-off, along with Philip Gustafsson, who's been unbelievable in goal for Minnesota. They're going to be teammates with Team Sweden in February for the Four Nations face-off. But it sounds like both Ek and Brodin are going to be at least a week or two or more here. They're being labeled week to week, not day to day. So we're not going to see them back anytime soon. With Ek, it's a lower body. With Brodin, it's an upper body. And both are, again, hugely important to the Minnesota Wild. Ek is Mr. Everything up front, from faceoffs to penalty kill to anchoring that top line, the grit that he brings every single night. It's going to be a tough stretch without him. And everybody knows how good Jonas Brodin is. And so the depth of this team has been tested and will be tested. I think Lauko is a little closer to a return. Matt Zuccarello has been cleared for some light off-ice workouts. So he's, at least starting his path back to getting on the ice. And so if the Wild can just even float around and play 500 hockey here the rest of December, it feels like by January, at some point, they're going to get these guys back. And I know for the three guys I mentioned for the Four Nations, they are absolutely going to want to be fully healthy and ready to play in that event and represent the blue and gold of the Swedes. And I think later today, after we're done recording, there's a pretty good chance that both Brock Faber and Matt Boldy are going to be picked for Team USA. And that's spectacular. And so if you're a Minnesota Wild fan and know that there's no Team Russia in this Four Nations face-off, Kirill Kaprizov would be a lock for any team anywhere in terms of that. But to have five guys on your roster that play a significant role, get rewarded, and get to play against the best of the best, it's exciting right now if you're a fan of this hockey team. We're going to talk to Matt Majka today on the show, and he's the Chief Executive Officer for the Wild. He works hand in hand with Craig Leopold. He's a classy dude. He's been doing this for a long time. He was hired way before the team even came to be back in the late 90s. And I've known Matt now throughout my 19 years of working on the broadcast side with this team. And he's got a great passion for this community, for this team. Like me, he gets the butterflies, he gets the nerves going every single night. And a lot of times we've had the chance to interview Matt during certain playoff series. And like me, he can barely watch. He gets so into the games. And so I love, especially right now, as the Wild sit here while we record today at 17-4-4, most points in the league, some incredible stories around this team, a really cool time to connect with Matt Majka and get his thoughts. And it's a different side of things, right? I'm the broadcast side, but on the business side, what they're working on and what they're working towards. And I think for all of us that follow the team, and if you're just a casual fan that listens to different hockey podcasts and you found us, we really thank you for being a part of this. But for guys like Matt and myself that are there every single day, the ultimate goal is to win that cup and to be around a team that's going to have that journey. This feels like the type of team that can do it. It's awfully early. It's December. But you usually have a pretty good idea at the midway point of the season where these teams stack up. And I think this looks very sustainable for the Minnesota Wild. And I can't wait to ask Matt what he thinks. But I look at John Hines and that coaching staff, and they've got to be right now on a national level considered one of the favorites for the Jack Adams Award. We already know that Kirill Kaprizov is being talked about, and rightfully so, for the MVP, for the Hart. And then I don't know how you don't take a look at Philip Gustafson and mention the Vezina Trophy with what he's doing. Unbelievable. And not just those three key cogs, but the depth behind them. You're seeing Jake Middleton's game go to another level again this year. And let's not forget that trade, we focus a lot on the Brock Faber and first-round draft pick that Billy Guerin got from L.A. for Kevin Fiala, a player at that time the Wild could not afford to re-sign. But Kaapo Kähkönen, hell of a nice kid. I don't think he's a regular NHL goalie. And you get a guy like Jake Middleton in that trade with San Jose, who's not only a part of your top four, but right now with Brodin out, he's on your top pair. He's playing monster minutes with Brock Faber. And not only is he defending and blocking shots, he's one of the top shot blockers on this team. He's one of the top hit makers on this team. He's also one of your top plus-minus guys. He's providing offense. Right now he's on pace to score between 10 and 20 goals this year. I mean, you're kidding me? And you're seeing the depth of this hockey team show. Declan Chisholm's being given a chance now to play a top four role with Jared Spurgeon, and he's flourishing. He's always had the offensive skill, the skating ability. We got him from Winnipeg for free. Billy Guerin has made some really unbelievable moves in the last couple of years that have allowed this team, still with the Parisi and Suter contracts hanging over their heads, be this competitive. And I look at the Lauko addition this year and what he's brought to the club, and how valuable he can be with the energy and the grit and the penalty kill and the emotion, and how beloved he is by his teammates already here in the opening couple of months. Marc-Andre Fleury, we don't talk about it enough. We talk about the Hall of Famer and the pranks and the personality and what a great dude he is, and that's all true. He hasn't lost a hockey game in regulation. He's 5-0-1, and he's playing the back end of back-to-backs with weird travel and no warm-ups and no, morning skate, all the routine that he's been used to, and he's 40 years old. This team's got a lot going for it right now, and I think Matt and I are going to break some of that down, talk about maybe some of the intangibles that go along with that. So I'm really excited about that conversation today, and I promise you in segment 3, we always have 3 segments. I welcome you back. We get to our guests. That's kind of the main course there, the middle portion. But in segment 3, I'm gonna give you my top 5 road venues if you're a Wild fan that you need to get to. And I've ranked them. It might be a little controversial, which is fine, but I will get to that today on the back end of this show and this recording. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to Matt Majka. Before we do that, I want to thank some of our great sponsors. I'll start with my dear friend John Schweitz, and he reminded me that when you think of the Freemasons, most of us think of the secret handshakes and the unusual hats and of all, those pancake breakfasts. But Minnesota Masonic Charities, who John works for, would prefer that we all think about the work they do right here in the Twin Cities. The Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M, the Children's Hospital, and of course the Masonic Home over in Bloomington. Just a few examples of the important work that Freemasons support right here in the great state of Minnesota. They are the largest fraternal organization in the world, and they consistently answer the call when it comes to charitable needs. I am so happy to partner with John Schweitz and Minnesota Masonic Charities, and also one of our newest sponsors, OnX Hunt.
We've told you about OnX Hunt. Now let me tell you about OnX Fish. Ice fishing is here, and it's time to hit the frozen water with OnX Fish. The Fish app is the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your confidence on ice. Use OnX Fish to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potentials. OnX Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. For a limited time, download OnX Fish for free in Minnesota and Wisconsin, or go to onxmaps.com/fish to get more information on the app that is changing the game on ice.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of buddies that are avid outdoorsmen. I'll mention one by name right now, Greg Redrood, dear friend of mine from the class of 1985 at Burnsville. Go Braves. He was pretty excited when he found out about OnX Hunt. I'm an avid indoorsman. Yeah, the only place I travel to on a regular basis is the movie theater and the Xcel Energy Center. But everything I need to know, I get from a lot of my friends, and they all tell me that you can't be a serious outdoors person without getting to OnX Hunt. So thanks for being a part of the show. And hey, we'd love to put your company or maybe your family friend or somebody you know here at the holidays wants to be a part of Wooden Sticks. I've got the guy to contact if you want to be a sponsor on our show. His name is Andrew Height. We call him the White Dog, AHEYDT at talknorth.com, AHEYDT at talknorth.com, and we'll elevate your business as best we can. When we come back today, we're going to elevate the Minnesota Wild. We're going to talk to one of the big dogs. Up next, it's Matt Majka, Chief Executive Officer for your favorite hockey team here on Wooden Sticks. All right, welcome back to Wooden Sticks. We are recording, as always, today from the Aquarius Home Services studio. It is such a fun time to connect with one of my dear friends with the Minnesota Wild, the Chief Executive Officer. He is Matt Majka. Matt, good times here for the first 2 months for our favorite hockey team.
My God, it's so great, Gorgie. And being honest about it, we were optimistic that we'd be a better team than last year, and we had so many injuries to contend with last year and all of that. But I'd be lying if I said that, I would have expected that we'd be sitting here. What are we, 17-4-4, 25 games into the season? It's been just a great, great ride.
It really has. And I thought we were a playoff team just like you. I did not see 17-4-4. And especially, I go back to the summer, Matt, when the schedule came out, and I looked at those first couple months, and I looked at the travel and some of the tough games and being away for the entire month of October. And I'm like, goodness gracious, they didn't do us any favors with that schedule. I kind of said, if we can get to Thanksgiving and kind of be even near a playoff spot, we'd be okay. I had no idea it was going to be this good.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. It has been a very challenging schedule, and we knew it when it came out. I agree. I thought if we could just be around 500 or above 500, and then we'd be in the mix, of course, at this time of year, and then we'd have a bunch of home games coming our way. But we're well above of that mark, and now we have a bunch of home games coming our way. Now, the injury thing I mentioned earlier, that hasn't been exactly kind to us, but I think that's what makes it even more impressive is how this year's team has been able to overcome significant injuries and continue to play a certain style that John Hines and the coaching staff have embedded, and the team seems so willing to play that style night in, night out, and win a lot of hockey games as a result.
Yeah, you mentioned the injury thing, and it's certainly topical right now with who the Wild are missing. They've been without Matt Zuccarello for 3 weeks. Jonas Brodin's out right now, and it appears it'll be kind of a week-to-week situation with him. Joel Eriksson left the game last night. Jakub Lauko's been missing, and they've continued to find ways to win hockey games. But, Ryan Carter made a really interesting point. He asked this of John Hines, and I never played NHL hockey, so I wouldn't have known, but he said the travel can be tough on the players' bodies. And what he meant by it is, shuffling around, changing cities, sleeping in different beds, and not being home for a long stretch of time. In Ryan Carter's opinion, and John Hines agreed, you get some soft tissue injuries that pop up, and we've seen that with some of the guys I just mentioned. And I guess the cool part of this is if you can get through this stretch now, we have now gotten through most of this rough travel, and give these guys a chance to be at home over the holidays and be at home for a lot of the second half of the season. Maybe we can weather the storm with those injuries, deal with them now, and then by the time we get to the playoffs, have these guys fully healthy, because I think this team is built right now to be able to win games in different ways.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting theory on the injury front, and but I agree with what you're saying. It's if we can, we've got a few more injuries to contend with for a little bit here, but again, whoever we've inserted into the lineup seems to be buying into again, the coaching staff's system and structure, and the team looks similar every night, no matter no matter who's on the ice. So I'm so impressed. And yes, if we could continue to play well for a stretch here and get healthy, truly healthy, and then be primed for the playoffs, it sure could be interesting. Our fans deserve playoff victories, and all of us here are frustrated by our inability to deliver those. We've been a playoff team, which I won't apologize for, but our fans deserve a Stanley Cup, and that's what Craig Leopold, Bill Guerin, and all the rest of us are trying to deliver here.
And I know, because you and I have had many conversations throughout the years, we've worked side by side. And do you ever allow yourself moments like this as we get to, I think, a juncture in the season where we're far enough into it where it's more than just a start, right? Like we're almost a third of the way through an 82 game schedule. Do you give yourself just a moment once in a while to think about what it would be like to have a cup run? Because you and I have both lived through different cup runs in our time in the Twin Cities. And I go back to the North Star days. We go back to 2003 when they got to the Western Conference Final. Do you give yourself just a little snippet of a chance to dream about what it would be like with this group?
Yeah, when you're on a run like this, I think it's hard not to just occasionally, ponder all of that. This is such a remarkable run, and like you say, it's not a start anymore. Like even a week ago, I was still calling it a start because I'm just kind of protecting myself a little bit too. That hey, okay, we still got to keep going, but this is more than a start. This is 25 games, and this team is showing no hint of letting up. Now, again, I don't think that. I think if we sustain this winning percentage through the season, we might be among the best in NHL history. But I just feel like this is a very good hockey team with a great coaching staff and a great roster that Bill and his staff have put together. That I have to admit that with each game, these last 4 games, these 4-game winning streak, 3 of them being overtime victories, we just keep finding a way to win, and often in dramatic fashion, come from behind. We don't run away from a lot of teams, but we win more than our share. And it's hard not to stop in a moment and think, well, what if? I mean, why not? This team is playing some really good hockey. Now, again, long season. It's too early to project, but I think I'm human. I dream about that, and this team kind of forces you to think about what if that happened? Couldn't that happen? And again, long way to go, and we'll keep hoping that that we can maintain this. But this is an exceptional group of guys through 25 games for sure.
And I look at any hockey team, 3 important positions. And if I was handicapping right now the Jack Adams Award, I would think that John Hines would be one of the favorites to be Coach of the Year. If I was handicapping the Vezina right now, I would take a look at what Philip Gustafson's done and say he'd be one of the favorites for that. And we've already heard the conversation nationally about the Hart Trophy and the MVP, and that could go to Kirill Kaprizov. So you've got a head coach, a goaltender, and a star player that are all right now considered the best at what they do. To me, that tells me this is something that is not just a start, that is something that is sustainable. And I believe that this hockey team legitimately is a cup contender. And I think we've seen enough now through the first 2 months to make you believe that. And it's just exciting to have this coaching staff, this set of goalies, and the amount of stars that this team has developed. And Kaprizov and Boldy right now are, to me, no different than McDavid and Draisaitl in Edmonton. And we just watched them come within a game of winning the Stanley Cup. So I really believe that this group can do it, and I'm starting to get pretty excited.
I love that. I love that about you. Yes, and it's all true. And I know you, because you've been around the game and played the game for so long here, Gorgie. As much as the sort of remarkable standout play of Kaprizov and Gus and Boldy too, and Zuki was on a nice run when he was in there, and several others. As you well know, what's so cool about this team, watching them through 25 games, is that we have a lot of players contributing in small but mighty ways, right? Like little plays, that make such a big difference in a hockey game. And so the outstanding moments, like the last 3 nights in overtime, and I won't say especially last night, but that was a pretty spectacular goal between Rossi and Kaprizov last night. But those moments are obvious, right? But as you well know, in our game, it takes it takes a team playing together in a structured way, the way John has them playing, and we have so many people contributing on a nightly basis. maybe not scoring, proficiently and all over the score sheet, but just making little plays to get the puck out of our end at the right moment in time, to have a big hit at the right moment in time, to drop the gloves if needed, like Marcus did the other day. These are the things that add up to success, beyond the very obvious but very important things that our superstars do.
And to me, another layer to this group specifically is how much they seem to enjoy each other. And we're
Yeah.
both lucky enough to kind of go behind the curtain once in a while. Tonight we're going to be together at a gala that is super important every year for the Wild About Children Foundation, and the players will come there and bartend and serve food. But I got to tell you, on the road, the dinners, the bus trips, the airplane, how much fun they have together. And then I see the pictures on social media during the Thanksgiving holiday at the team gathering over at Jared Spurgeon's house. And I think that's a big part of winning at any level in any sport is the chemistry off the field or off the ice. And I got to tell you, Matt, being around this group, and this is my 19th year of doing this, I have yet to see a team that has as much fun together away from the game as this group does. And I think that might be a part of the secret to their success on the ice. I really do.
Yeah, I have to believe you're right about that. Hockey is, I really do think hockey is a unique sport. It's such a team sport with, the constant changing of lines, unlike any other sport that I can think of. Every 30, 40 seconds we have a different set of five guys out there, and the nature of the game, the constant motion of the game, it's difficult to, I think it's a very different sport, and I think it is, if not the most, among certainly the most team-oriented sports. So to have that kind of camaraderie that you're suggesting off the ice has to contribute to success on the ice. So I absolutely believe that. And the other thing I'll quickly comment on is, I like you, I've been here a long time, right from the start, and throughout the 25 years, we've had better teams and not so good teams and everything in between. Um, the best teams that we have had, and I think, well, this one right now, certainly through 25 games, is on paper the best team we've had. uh, they play for each other, right? You can see it. You can see it. I think you're seeing it off the ice, on road trips and such, but you can see it on the ice, the way they step up for each other and celebrate with each other, and play for each other. You can see that if you watch a team enough, and to me, that's coming through really strongly this year.
I think all of us that work in the building and around the building and all of our fans have their own way of doing it. But game night routine to me is so fascinating. And people always ask me, where are you during the game? Well, home games, I'm in the tunnel right behind the bench. And if it's a big penalty kill or a tough situation and I get too nervous, I walk into the stick room and I pace in there for a while because I've got LaPanta and either Carter or Walls in my ear on the broadcast. I want to know what your routine is on game night.
Yeah, oh, that I love that. I love that. Yeah, we all, we're all invested in this thing, right? We all care deeply, and we all want to win. We're humans, right? So, and again, our fans deserve this so much. So, hey, look, my routine is, I'm in the office all day. It's a normal work day, and then around 4 or 5 o'clock, I sort of start transitioning to something I call game mode. I don't know exactly what that is, except that it's different than being in my office and being in meetings and that kind of thing. So between 5 and 6:30, I'm usually in my office by myself and just kind of looking for a second wind and transitioning into the game. Now during the game, in my position, I will need to make certain visits to corporate partners or key season ticket holders or whatever it might be. There are some responsibilities during the game, but I'm mostly in Craig Leopold's suite, our owner's suite. Craig, as many of our fans know, and is really focused on the game, really in a zone during games, which I love. And but I think he likes to have me and a couple of others around his suite every night and kind of there with him. And so I sit next to Craig during games, and we kind of go through the highs and lows, and we're both pretty focused and intense on the ups and downs of every game, and so and then, like I say, we during intermissions we catch our breath, we maybe go visit a couple of suites or a couple of season ticket holders and say hello, but then really when the game starts again, there's not a lot of socializing. It's a real focus on the game and some commentary on the game, and it's a little like every hockey game. It's a roller coaster, right? It's
It
just
is.
but it's great, and I it's the people ask me, now, do you have to go to all the games? I'm like, no, I get to go to all the games.
Me
It's the
too.
best part of the job, and I mean, if it were, if the games weren't part of this job, I don't think it would be nearly as much fun, right? So
Right.
I relish the opportunity to be at our games alongside, a bunch of our staff and everybody who works so hard to put these games on.
Well, and I didn't realize the routine with Mr. Leopold until, I don't know, it was years ago. As broadcasters, we get invited during the preseason to come watch a game in his suite because a lot of the preseason
Yeah.
home games we're not televising, so we're not working. And it was a preseason game early on in camp, and so most of the roster were not going to be fixtures with the Minnesota Wild that year. And when the game started, like, the conversation was over. He went to his seat. He had his program, and it was widely known in that suite that you just let him alone until the period was over. And to me, I love it. And I'm going to tell you from my perspective, aside from my role broadcasting, just as a fan of the team, to have an owner that cares that much, that
Yeah.
wants to see the team win that much. If you're a fan of the Minnesota Wild, then he's right there in there with you.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what that makes him such a great owner, because he's going to do whatever he can
Yeah.
to give this team the best chance to win.
Absolutely. There's truer words were never spoken. He, as we've all witnessed since he came here in 2008, he has been to the cap every single year. And he will not, pinch pennies to save money at the risk of any sort of degradation of the team. Like he wants us to be the best, and most importantly, he wants us to win a Stanley Cup. Like that is absolutely his foremost goal. And I know he will not sleep well until that happens. And I believe we're going to get there. And I you mentioned earlier about, do you allow yourself to think about the cup and all that? And I don't know, none of us know whether this is the year or, whatever, but I really, in my it's my 27th year here, because I started before the team took the ice. In my 20 plus years here, I've never felt a more clear path toward the cup than what I feel right now with what Bill has done, and with John and the coaching staff, and and Craig as an owner who's willing to invest. I've never seen a more clear path to the cup. Doesn't mean we're going to win it this year or next year, but I can see it. I can see a path now, like as more clearly than I've ever seen one before, and that's exciting.
I've been a fan of the National Hockey League since I was 6 or 7 years old. So I've got 5 decades of data. And I truly believe that teams that win the Stanley Cup have a star player. Like, the cup ends up finding those star players. And I grew up watching Wayne Gretzky, and he was the guy. He was the man. And the Wild have had some unbelievable players in their 20 plus years. I go back to Marian Gaborik and what a special player he was. And I look at Matt Cullen and Zach. We've had some great players, but Kirill Kaprizov to me is completely different. And he, to me, Matt, is the type of guy that I see winning Stanley Cups. And so I can't help myself. I have a job to do every night, but when he's on the ice, I am mesmerized by 97. And you talked about the overtime winner. I think he's done it 8 or 9 times now in his short career with the Wild. He is just that guy for me that I can't stop watching.
Yeah, he really, you're so right. We've all said this to each other many times, and fans have heard it, but I can't, what's I think so unique about him, now that we've all been able to watch him for a number of years now, is, his talent is supreme. Like that's obvious. You watch a half a period and you're like, okay, that guy's different than all the rest of the players in terms of skill level. But what I think, just, and we all know this, I'm not shedding any new light here, but I can never stop myself from saying this when I talk about him, is what separates him, as we all know, is not just that supreme talent, which is on an elite level, but it's how hard he works, right? It's hard to find that combination, the elite talent, like, top five talent and skating ability and all of that. But, and then, elite thinking the game too, the hockey IQ thing. He's elite there as well. But at the end of the day, I really feel like it's the work ethic, the elite work ethic he has, that really makes him the special player that he is. And unlike, again, with all due respect to numerous other Wild players, unlike any other player in Wild history, he's just a remarkable combination of elite talent on several measures.
I think the comparable player, and I've told this story at different functions I've spoken at because it blew me away. Alex Goligoski is a guy I got to know very well in his time with the Wild. He's a really smart guy, and he's won a Stanley Cup. And so I asked him to compare Kirill Kaprizov to somebody else he either played with or he played against, and he went directly right away without pausing to Sidney Crosby, and he said, "What makes Kirill so much like Sidney? No matter how much success they have, they don't care. The only thing that matters is winning. And they believe that if they keep getting better, they're going to give their team a better chance to win. And they're obsessed with it." He said, "When I look at Kirill, he is just like Crosby that way." And we know now, as Crosby's at the end of his career, that he did it 3 times. So I believe in Kirill. I don't believe he's going anywhere. I got to tell you, Matt, I mean this sincerely. I know him pretty well. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to play his entire career here. And I think because of him, I believe we're going to win at least one, if not multiple cups. And to me, that's what it's all about. And I still can't believe where we found him in the draft, that late in the draft. But I'll never forget the very first time he skated, right after, remember they had that COVID, that awkward season. We started late.
Yes, ridiculous.
I walk into the rink, and that particular day, the team got out there, like they were scheduled to skate at 10:30, and they got out there at 10:15, and Wes Walls was already there. And it was my first chance to watch Kirill in person. And I looked at Wes, and I said, "Wes, tell me he's the real deal." And he goes, "Gorgie, are you going to have fun watching this guy play?" And that was day one, right? And then we had that amazing first game in LA where he, again, scored the overtime winner. He's a special kid. He's a really special kid.
Yes, no doubt. That's so interesting about his first practice that you guys were on it. But it's I can't, I gotta just make a quick comment about that COVID season, which was, well, first of all, tragic in so many ways for so many people, but also very difficult for our industry, where we played a 56 game regular season to 250 fans, limited for most all of that season, 250 fans per game. It was such a tragedy in obvious ways, but even for our fans, people could watch on TV, but as we well know, our game is best in person, and he did so many amazing things that first year. He continues to do so, but it was also new and fresh and unbelievable that first year. And there was nobody in the arena. It was we all, or a number of us employees, were there every night, but it felt so lonely and surreal in that arena when he would do something remarkable for the first time that we'd ever seen him do that. And then to look around to an empty XL Energy Center, it was such a travesty, but he's made up for it since then. Lots of big moments and big games in front of sold out crowds, and it just keeps coming.
It does. Now this is Wooden Sticks, and at some point we got to get back to where it all started. So you've mentioned you've been with the Wild from day one. What drew you to hockey? What drew you to this opportunity to work for the Minnesota Wild before the Wild even existed? Right? It was a hope and a prayer. It was Norm Coleman. It was Bob Nagley. How did you get involved?
Yeah, well, just I I always boil it down to, you know, dumb luck mostly, but also relationships. And I'm gonna say, just showing up, working hard. Uh, I went to the university. I grew up in the western suburbs and went to the University of Minnesota. Always loved sports growing up. Played a bunch of sports, including hockey, not at a very high level, but loved sports growing up, and felt that would be a good home for me to try to have a career in at some point. So I thought Gorgie, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I wanted to be a sports broadcaster.
I did
And
not know
so
that.
yeah, I had a communications degree at the U. I took an internship out of college. I at a cable television station, so I could do lots of different things, including some on-air stuff. And I had a resume tape that I sent around, and thought I'd get my first job at Care 11, in a matter of weeks, right? And nothing like that happened. And before long, I kind of figured out, um, maybe you're not all that good at this. And I wasn't getting all the callbacks that I was sure were coming. And so I changed course. I ended up seeing an ad, a want ad back in the newspaper that existed back in those days. And I saw an ad for something called Ole's Innovative Sports, which some people may know became Rollerblade, which was a company based here in the Twin Cities, which started as and I know you know this, Gorgie, but as an off-season hockey training tool, an inline roller skate, the
Oh,
wheels in a line rather than side by side. I knew what that was back in the early 80s because I had worked at a sporting goods store in college that were among the first stores to sell it. And so I thought, that's a great product. It's hockey. I love it. I'm gonna just apply for the sales job. And long story short, that worked out. I got that job, and I spent 15 years at Rollerblade. Bob Nagley, the first owner of the Wild, bought Rollerblade in my second year there. So to the relationships issue, I was able to, learn from Bob, and he was a great mentor to me, and we established a relationship over the ensuing, 15 years or so, so we had some nice success with Rollerblade. It grew in its peak years from the early '80s to the mid '90s from $1 million annually to a $225 million company. And so Bob sold the company in 1995. I stayed on board. He called me in '97 when he was chasing down, trying to become one of the 4 expansion markets that the league was advertising for in 1997. And again, long story short, miracles large and small. Bob and Norm Coleman, Governor Arnie Carlson, Jack Sperling, Todd Lewicki, many others, were able to get that expansion franchise here in St. Paul, and XL Energy Center was born. And they, Bob called me as all of that was just starting in '97. And he said, "Hey, look, if we get this franchise, would you come over?" And I thought about that for about 2 seconds and said, "Absolutely." And so I joined them right there at the very early days in the summer of '97, and it's been just an incredible journey ever since. And I just feel super blessed to have this opportunity every day, even after 27 years. I still feel really lucky to have this opportunity to be part of bringing NHL hockey back to Minnesota, and but we got to deliver a Stanley Cup to Minnesota. That's the big thing.
okay. So I got to ask you a couple of questions about Wild related topics. Where did the state of hockey theme come from? Because I love it, and I know it's been here for a while.
Yeah. Well, my short answer is that it came from the fans. So, one of the curses and blessings we had back in '97 when the franchise was granted was that we had 3 years before we were going to start play. And the reason for that was, as many people would remember, we had to tear down the St. Paul Civic Center and
Yep.
build XL Energy Center. So, that took 3 years. That's why we had 3 years. So, okay, we had a lot of time on our hands, right? So, and in the first week, when we turned on the phones on June 26th of 1997, and hoped that people might call and put $100 down on a ticket, a deposit for season tickets. In the first week, we had 6,000 people do that, and within a month, we had 12,000, and before long, we had this long waiting list. And so, anyway, the point is, we had lots of fans to talk to, lots of customers who wanted to share their hopes and dreams with us for this franchise. And so we took advantage of that. That's if we did one thing well in the early days of the organization, we listened well as marketers. And they told us, not in those words, but they told us this was the state of hockey. We may have put the three words to it, but they told us this was the state of hockey by talking about their pride and the pride and heritage and tradition of hockey in Minnesota and what it means to them, and that they hoped that this franchise would respect and celebrate and grow the sport in the way that honors its past and its future. And so, after all these, conversations and focus groups and interviews with our season ticket holders and the hockey community for that matter as well, it really, I remember being in a room with a few folks where the words came out, but really it's the fans that told us this was the state of hockey. And the reason it stuck for 27 years and is that it's true. It's not marketing mumbo jumbo. It's authentically true. This is the state of hockey. And if you ask any Minnesotan if it is, they'll tell you damn straight it is, and they'll tell you every reason why. And we have all the facts to back it up. So it's just the reason it works is because it's true.
So I got to tell you, back when the Wild first were born, I was still coaching women's college hockey. So my buddies and I got together and bought said season tickets, put that $100 down right off the hop, and ended up, there was four of us that shared two seats. So we went to probably half the games. And when we walked into the building, and we had tickets for the first few years before I started kind of focusing more on the broadcast side of things. But the wall of jerseys, the high school jerseys that hang in that building, have been and will always be my favorite part. Like, I'm really proud of our building. I travel around the league every year, and I'm amazed at how nice our building is almost 25 years later now. But I got to tell you, Matt, those jerseys are so freaking cool. I love that aspect of the arena and tying it to the community. Who came up with the idea, and how did all those sweaters get gathered?
Yeah, honestly, like there's so many of those. There's a lot of great questions about some of the iconic things in our brand and in our building. The jerseys being one of them. The flag bearer that starts every game. Who thought of that?
Yes.
Who thought of state of hockey? Who thought of having kids sell the program? Hockey youth hockey kids sell the program. Honestly, to God, while I was here for all of that, I have no idea who thought of anything. All I know is that we had a dedicated group of people who spent a lot of time and had time in those early days to think about, okay, if this is the state of hockey, how does that look and feel in our arena? How do we celebrate state of hockey in our arena? And well, how would it look different than any other arena in the United States and maybe Canada too? And so we just, we had a lot of fun and time to dream up what state of hockey, how it manifests. And I can't tell you who actually said, hey, we should hang the jerseys up, or hey, let's have a flag bearer every night, a kid skate out to center ice and plant that flag. Or let's make sure that instead of having, some guy or girl, sell programs at a profit, let's take our programs every night and have a youth hockey sell them, and the proceeds go to them. All of that just came out of the great truth that this is the state of hockey. And then through the years, we've been able to add to it. Hockey Day Minnesota has, as you well know, Gorgie, you're there every year. That's been another great manifestation of hockey. This is our ice when we had fans come from all over the state with little samples of water from their lakes that we actually cleansed and then used to make the ice for several years here at XL Energy Center. We're always challenging ourselves to dream up new expressions of what state of hockey is today. And there's a ton of talented people, and we have outside marketing agencies that have helped us through the years. A lot of folks deserve credit. I'm not going to name any names because it's been because I don't know. I can't remember who thought of what. I just know that it's a team that worked together that didn't care who got the credit, but just came up with great ideas as a team.
I got to tell you, it's still a magical place for me. I still every night, and we work there. 41 home games every regular season. I still get the butterflies when I walk in that lobby. There's a certain smell to that arena. A lot of it is the mini donuts that are not far away from that main entrance. When I get there about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon, it is a magical place. And I think anyone that's been there for a playoff game with the towels flapping and some of the crazy results we've seen in those games, I just think it's just that place. And the wall of jerseys, the state of hockey, all the different things that make that place up. It's a really cool place to call home. And I just love, like last night was a nondescript, early December Tuesday night game, right? It just was on the schedule. It's just a game against Vancouver. It's not a division rival. It ends up being an unbelievable atmosphere. The building's full. It's a physical, fast-paced game. We get this crazy overtime. We get Jake Middleton on the ice after, and it's one of those nights where at the end of the year, you're like, that was one of the top 5 nights of the year, and I never saw it coming. That's what makes that place so cool.
That's so true. And that's because, I mean, it has to do with our team and our coaching staff and all of that. But the fans bring a soul to that building most nights. Maybe not every single night. We have a stinker here and there, and it's hard for anybody to get invested in a stinker. Every team has them. But you're so right about last night. Like, okay, this will be an interesting game. We don't play Vancouver all that often. They're a good team. Let's see what we got here on a Tuesday night. And then it turned into, like, I don't know, playoff atmosphere. Might feel a little bit like some hyperbole, but it just it was a great high. And so, by the way, so was the Nashville game on Saturday night.
Yes.
And that one probably was set up a little better, but our building can come alive on any given night in the state of hockey because of the soul the fans bring to the building and the way our team can play. You just never know. It's very rare that you won't get the kind of atmosphere that our fans most often deliver. So it's really cool. It's really cool.
All right, we've come to kind of the end of the chat here. We always close with this, Matt. This is the hat trick hot seat. It's just 3 questions to give our listeners a little more insight into, maybe you a little bit away from the rink. 3 quick ones, no wrong answer. We'll start with number 1. Your all-time favorite sports movie would be what?
Yeah, I guess I would have to go with Miracle. That moment in time for those of us who've grown up in that era, it's hard to beat. And I thought they did a pretty darn good job of replicating that moment for those all of us who lived through it, and some of the people who didn't live through it too. So yeah, I have to go with Miracle.
And I think you're exactly right, having lived through that. And for me, it's the greatest sporting event I ever watched. Yep. But the best part of that is they were able to bring Al Michaels' call into the movie. Like the hockey stuff looked real. They had the right actors in place, but to have you had to have Al Michaels. If you were going to make that movie and really take people back to February of 1980, you had to have that iconic voice. They did that. They did it right. It's for sure my favorite sports movie. And I've got a bunch that I love, but that one takes me back to a special time. Now, this one, I have no idea where this is going to go, but this is one of my favorite things. And I know Ryan Carter does this on his podcast too. What was your first concert? Well, I'd love to know the band and the venue when young Matt Majka went to his very first concert.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the venue was St. Paul Civic Center. So full circle here, right? Billy Joel, St. Paul Civic Center, and had a blast. And Billy Joel remains after all these years. He's still kicking, so am I. He's among my favorite artists still, and I had a great night. And I just think it's kind of interesting that I started there in St. Paul, as a teenager, and now here I am on those very grounds with a different building and a job that I would have only dreamed about back then.
It's funny you bring up the Civic Center because I think of this every year about this time of year. I grew up in a strict Catholic house in Burnsville, and Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, you went to church, and I got Prince tickets at the Civic Center on Christmas Eve, 1984, and it was a 2:00 show. And I had to beg and plea with my parents, and thank God they let me go because I had a good friend that worked at the music store in the Burnsville Center that got us second row tickets. and it
Oh
was
my.
an absolutely spectacular show. And again, the Civic Center, so it's the property where we hang out all the
Yeah,
time now at the X. And I'll never forget that Christmas Eve show that Prince put on. Sheila E. was the warm up, and it was just mind blowing. So
that's
anyway,
awesome.
the
I
Civic
love it.
Center was a cool place. Final spot, and this is a fun one too. And I'm going to get into this after you're gone when we close the show. But so many cool places you've been to. But what is your favorite road venue to watch the Minnesota Wild? I don't know how often you get out. I know you've been out on the road with us, and I've
Yeah.
seen you out there. But what is your favorite spot to go watch the team on the road?
Yeah, I have to. I will answer the question. I have an answer, but I'll start by saying I don't. I don't travel all that much with the team. Like
Right.
several times, a few times a year. First of all, I had no value on the road, and most of the work that I can do that makes a difference is here in Minnesota. But so I don't go, and I don't like it. I don't like being in enemy territory and rooting for my team. It's just not. It's not a great atmosphere. You can't really let loose, and pretty quickly that people figure out that you're with the other guys, and I don't love being in that situation. But I think actually it's Montreal. I just
Oh,
that fan base up there is so lively, and they react to every aspect of the game, and they're super expressive. I really love that atmosphere. I did have a chance to go to the old Montreal Forum way back when, which was
oh,
very cool, but also like the current arena. And I just have a lot of respect for that fan base. They are really dedicated, and the atmosphere is really alive up there.
I totally agree. It's always full. I don't care what place the Canadians are in the standings.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. It is a hockey crazy market, and they know
yeah,
the game. And if
yeah,
if Marc-Andre Fleury, and this happened as recent as maybe last year, makes a really big save that's backbreaking for the
yeah,
home team, they'll still acknowledge
yeah,
him with a standing ovation. And that to me is what makes that market incredibly unique. And it's a
yeah,
really cool place to watch a game. I regret never having gotten to the old Forum. I've been on the
yeah,
property. There's a mall there now, and there's a movie theater at Center Ice where the old Forum used to be. But Montreal is a really cool place, and I appreciate that answer. And Matt, I got to tell you, I really enjoyed the conversation. I knew it would
yes,
fly by, and it did.
hmm,
And we'll just keep those dreams tucked
yeah,
away because we both have those Stanley Cup dreams, and I really like the club, and I like where this whole thing is going, and I hope we can circle back and maybe have another conversation in
yeah.
May or June when things are really percolating.
Right on. Well, it's always great to talk to you, Gorgie. Thank you for everything you do for our organization and for our fans. You are such an ambassador for the state of hockey, and we're super appreciative. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt, and I really appreciate your time. And it's fun to dream. If you're a Wild fan listening, this is a good time right now to be a hockey fan in this market and enjoy the ride. It's going to be a hell of a great season, and I'll be back after a quick break. We'll put a close on another episode here of Wooden Sticks. Yeah, you can hear the passion, no doubt about it, in that entire conversation. I love, and it starts at the top, and I think duly we definitely talked about Craig Leopold and how much he cares and how much it matters to him. But I think there's a trickle down effect, and I think there's a reason that a gentleman like Matt Majka has been here from day one and continues to love being here. He wants to see it all the way through, and the love he has for hockey, for the Wild, and most importantly for the fans, and you could really feel that in our chat today. It's sincere, and I've watched hockey games with him from the press box. I've walked around that rink and bumped into him. I've been at different events. We're going to be together again tonight at a charity event for Wild About Children, and he lives it every single day. And it's so much fun to hear that passion come through and to hear it from his perspective. It's a different way of watching the game when you're in the suite with the owner and there's a business to run. But the business that they come back to is trying to win and try to give the fans what they rightfully deserve here in this market. And if you're going to be the state of hockey at some point, you've got to see it all the way through and win a Stanley Cup. The North Stars were close twice. The Wild had one incredible run, a run that none of us saw coming in 2003. And I believe with 97 at the helm here at the top of the charts, and with the goaltending depth that this organization has put together, and some of the intangible pieces, the Spurgeons, the Felinos, the heart and soul guys like Ryan Hartman and Jake Middleton, I think it's going to happen. I do think that this group, I don't know if it's going to be this year or the next or sometime in the next handful of years, I believe this group's going to get there. And boy, has it been fun to watch this year, and I can't wait to see where this season ends up going. But I promised before the show was over, we would get to top 5 road destinations you need to get to if you're a fan of the Minnesota Wild. And I'm going to say this with all due respect to 2 obvious choices that are not in my top 5. Tip of the hat, and an also eligible mention to both Toronto and Montreal. And Matt talked about Montreal and the Bell Center. It is spectacular. It's a cool city. It's very European. And Toronto with the Hockey Hall of Fame and the love they have for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're both great spots. I wouldn't talk you out of it, but neither one is in my top 5. So here we go from 5 up to number 1. 5's a sneaky one that you might not have seen coming, but it's Tampa Bay. And I don't always appreciate the warm weather spots, but Tampa Bay, to me, does it right. They've got a tremendous fan base. And it isn't just since they won the Stanley Cups. That building was full long before the Lightning won those multiple Stanley Cups. It's a gorgeous building. And it's right in the heart of downtown where you can stay right there and you won't need to rent a car. You can walk around and there's cool restaurants right on the water. It's an awesome building. It's a building with atmosphere. Now, sentimentally, my oldest daughter, Katerina, lives about 40 minutes from there. So every year when the Wild schedule comes out, I circle that date and we get together and have dinner the night before the game. And it's incredibly special to me for that. But if I'm recommending my top 5 spots, taking that out of the equation, Tampa Bay is a really cool spot to go watch your Minnesota Wild. Number 4 is Vancouver, up in British Columbia, another really neat city where you can stay right on the water. It's a walking city, so you won't need a car. You can walk everywhere. You can check all the sites out. The shopping is spectacular. The food is second to none. The views are great. The weather's a little warmer, so even in winter, it's not like it is here. It's a cool place. And again, a great hockey market. Like more often than not, that building is vibrant. It's full. The Canucks are relevant right now. They're one of the better teams in the Western Conference. So definitely get up to Vancouver and check that out. 3 is a no-brainer. You got to put Vegas on this top 5. It's number 1, it's Las Vegas, right? I mean, it's a really great place to go visit. It's another place where, aside from watching the Wild play, there's a ton of things to do, a ton of great restaurants and food to partake in. And of course, you can gamble along the way, but getting to the actual game, it's quite a production. They do a whole miniature little, almost like a Broadway show leading up to the puck drop. They do a little skit on the ice. You have to be there to see it. They've got the showgirls out there in full costume and all their glory for warm-ups, try to distract the opposition. They only line up in the rows behind the visitors' net, which I think is hilarious. And it's always loud. It's a great building to watch hockey in. Get to Vegas to watch the Wild. And the cool part is when you go watch the Wild play in Las Vegas, 40 to 50% of the crowd will be from Minnesota. You'll be with your friends, and you really won't be outnumbered unless it's the playoffs when you go watch the Wild play in Vegas. Number 2 takes me back to my days as a North Star fan. I remember the drive down to the old Chicago Stadium. Now it's the United Center. It's a spectacular place to watch hockey, and you can drive there from the Twin Cities. You got to get down to Chicago. The national anthem in Chicago for a Blackhawks game is undefeated. It will never be topped. I don't care if it's a Super Bowl. I don't care what it is. It will never, ever, ever be topped. You have to be there to know what I'm talking about, but they cheer the entire time. It's an electric atmosphere. It's a gorgeous building. Connor Bedard is there now, so you've got a young superstar to go watch. Got to take in a Wild game in Chicago. That leaves us only one. And if you know me, and I think, we've done this show long enough where you probably have a pretty good idea where I'm headed, it is Madison Square Garden in the concrete jungle in New York City. It is incredible. I don't care when the Wild play the Rangers. Sadly, we only get to go there once a year. It just feels like such a big game, and it starts with the Garden. It's iconic. It's the world's most famous arena for a reason. when the Rangers come on the ice and the PA guy says, "Ladies and gentlemen, here they are, the New York Rangers." It's magical. I mean, it is such a cool place. And the city, I don't need to sell you on New York. The Broadway shows, the restaurants, the sights, it can't be topped. And every year, outside of looking when the Wild play in Tampa so I can see my daughter, the next thing I do is look at when we get to go to New York. It is absolutely number one with a bullet, and you will not be disappointed if you take in a hockey game at Madison Square Garden. A couple years ago, I was lucky enough to tie back to our conversation with Mr. Majka. I got to see Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden, and one of the greatest concerts I've ever seen. Part of it because of the venue, right? That's his home barn, and he put on a 3.5-hour show that blew me away. And yeah, it was the Garden, world's most famous arena. Get there to go see your Minnesota Wild, and get here every single week. We got to have you back for more great hockey conversations. Down the road, we've made a connection with Bill Baker. We're going to talk a little Olympic hockey, a little Miracle on Ice with Mr. Baker here in the next couple of weeks. More great Wild content coming. And again, the high school hockey season has just started. Connected with Sean Goldsworthy, the head coach over at Minnetonka, the son of the great Bill Goldsworthy. He and the Goldie Shuffle. So he's also on the docket to be a guest here in the next couple of weeks. If you want to contact me, ping me on my X and/or Twitter account at Gorgamatic21, and I'll try to facilitate any guests that you'd like to have on the show. Most importantly, thank you for listening. We're back next week with another brand new edition of Wooden Sticks.